So that takes us to the top billing of the evening. And we're thrilled to have Genevieve and Jen join us from Slalom Consulting, who are going to take us through the kind of birds of a feather topic and really the value of having special interest groups and folk who are of like mind come together. And they're going to take us through some sessions, which I think are going to be really fun and exciting. So let me hand over to you folks. I think you are going to drive your own slides, right?
Yes, I will take over if you don't mind. So good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Genevieve Vega. I've been a consultant with Slalom for a couple of years, almost 3 years now, and several years of experience before that. I won't say my age or anything like that, but over a decade for sure. Really what we wanted to talk to you guys about today was a chance to get you all together to make sure that we had a chance to leverage the special interest groups and make sure that we continued your conversation really from the last session that you had to really say, okay, let's get you together, birds of a feather, so that you have some similar backgrounds. And then we want to talk through, of course, break you up into the breakout rooms, and we want to talk through maybe some changes or challenges that you in your area of expertise might be experiencing. So we're thinking of this as a continuation of your conversation from last month. To get us started, I'm actually going to give you a moment of vulnerability. So I'm an admitted coffee addict. Hopefully you guys can see my screen here and the story of what happened to Genevieve and her coffee habit when I changed, when I took on a project with, I'll say, a large utility company, and I was brought in very late in the process. So I was brought in on an assignment where a technology supply chain change was made and not communicated out to the large audience that it was impacting. There wasn't a lot of training, there wasn't a lot of processes, and so I kind of jumped in and got to work to help manage this change process. And through all of that and all the apologies and the just wait and sees that we had to explain to this large audience that was impacted, I developed a minimum of 4 shots of espresso a day habit to kind of stay on pace with everything that was going on. So all that to say, what we want to do here is help you guys avoid a 4 shots of espresso a day habit, or at least, take some of the stress off of you when it comes to planning for change. And I think we can all agree that change is the name of the game right now, right? We're all experiencing some kind of change. We're experiencing change in the ways we work, or if you have children, changes in the way they're schooling, change in the way that we're interacting with everybody around us. So what we want to be able to do here today is talk through, what is organizational change management, and Jen will go into a definition of that so that you guys can understand the difference between that and maybe technology change management or change control, and why it's so important to the success of your projects. We'll also help you gather with your SIGs to work through the changes that people in your role might be facing to help facilitate those relationships, and then also, talk through some of your common challenges. And then together, you guys will be providing you some strategic templates just to start out the conversation and help you understand and prepare for the impact your changes might have on your people resources, which we all know are really important to our success in business and in life general. And at the end of our time together, we'll very quickly debrief. You won't have to share out any of your templates, but we want you to share out the high points of your discussion across all the SIGs so you can see if there's any commonalities or differences. So with that, I will transfer it over to, well, I'll keep presenting, but Jen, I'll have you cue yourself up with a quick introduction, please.
Absolutely. So it's nice to meet everybody. I am Jen Witter, and I have been consulting in this space, organizational effectiveness, and especially deeply in organizational change management for, I hate to say over 25 years, because that would definitely date me, but that's truth. And I've experienced a lot. I've had the 4-shot of espresso experience that Genevieve shared, and fortunately I've had some other much more positive experiences. And so I just wanted to share a little bit, lay a foundation for when we talk about organizational change and we think about intentionally managing to really get the investment from the return on our investment. I want to share a little bit about what that means and how we approach it, and that there's actually significant research and methodology that supports this. We're going to introduce some of those tools to you that you can practice with in your SIGs as you're networking and connecting, focused around a specific change that you'll come up with. So just to lay the foundation, you all know, I'm preaching to the choir here, that anything you do, companies are spending billions of dollars a year on new strategic initiatives, strategies, processes, changes, IT infrastructure, applications, a lot of cloud stuff, DevOps and Agile we heard. I mean, all kinds of things, new ways to reach and interact with customers. And the bottom line is, if the people in your organization don't change their behavior, don't change the way they work, don't embrace that new technology or that new process or that new value and use it in the way that you designed it to be used, what you're going to find is that you're going to end up getting something less than the intended outcome or return on your investment. And that's a pretty costly proposition when you think about how much goes into these investments. You can have the very best technology in the world, the best processes, the best infrastructure, but if people don't know what they need to change, how they need to change, and why they need to change, and in fact, why they need to do it now, they're less likely to buy into that change. They're less likely to go on the journey with you. They're less likely to truly transform the way they work. They might do a short-term change and then gradually go back to the way things used to be, or as much of that as they can get away with, just because it's comfortable. That's what people are used to doing. That's where their expertise lies, in those prior patterns. So how do we go about doing this? There's a couple of things we think about at Slalom. We talk about helping people get ready, be willing, and be able to make change, and what that looks like. So let's talk a little bit. I want to start with a definition of change management. And I like to do this when I'm speaking to a group that's IT professionals, because I know change management means something different in IT. So change management in IT, I liken to version control. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about organizational change management. So how people change their behavior and embrace new ways of working in a way that truly transforms the outcomes that the organization is seeking to achieve. So there's a well-studied process, and like I mentioned, I'm going to say it again, people need to have that runway to get ready for what the change is. We talk about that as being ready. They need to also buy into the change. There's a motivational component there. Understanding why this change is happening and why it needs to happen now is a big part of that. And that's what we refer to as being willing. And so there are intentional things we can do to help them become willing. And then they also have to have the ability. They need to have the skills and the capabilities and the understanding, and even some opportunity to practice and get good at the new way of working in order for them to really take off. And then in addition, once things settle in and once the change isn't new anymore, we need the right reinforcement to make sure that it stabilizes and sticks. So again, we talk about it as being ready, willing, and able, and then stable. We're trying to look to make sure that this is a new way of working. It's not just a temporary thing. So Genevieve is going to talk a little bit more about the process of change and what it takes to make organizational change happen and stick. Genevieve?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I want to put a fine point on the change management definition in saying that this also includes change that's driven by global pandemics. So again, change, you might have a nice long runway to get ready for a change, but sometimes you need to make changes very, very rapidly. So we want to kind of level set here. Essentially, we're looking at change as a process. With any change in life, right, there's a process. So think about a painful change, perhaps for some of us, like buying a car, right? Do you think you get a better deal when you're rushed to a purchase out of maybe an unfortunate necessity where you quickly need to get transportation, or when you had a chance to plan, to research, to work with lenders and dealers or brokers perhaps in advance of the purchase? That's definitely something we're thinking about. We're going from a current state, like Jen mentioned, that's where they're comfortable. Current state is our comfort zone. And for your employees that maybe have changes that they're undergoing, again, by necessity or by plan, like a strategic goal, we know that those folks, they know what they're doing. They've built shortcuts and workarounds to get their stuff done, even if the current state might have a little pain, it's the pain that they know. And then there's a transition, right? This can be messy. This is learning something new. This is maybe a new way of working, learning new technologies. You got to learn where to click. You don't know all the shortcuts on your keyboard. It's that, you know, I think of an ERP implementation that I went through that went from black and green screens to SAP, and holy smokes, we moved people's cheese, right? As that famous change book talks about. So it can be very difficult to get people out of their comfort zone and into that future state because it is uncomfortable, and you know, even it's well, we have to do this. Our old way of doing things is going away and no longer works for us. That doesn't mean it's not going to be uncomfortable for folks. So we have some examples here that you can see with the check boxes, and feel free to use your reactions on the Zoom toolbar down at the bottom. Give us a thumbs up if any of these examples sound like something you've been through, maybe something you're in the middle of going through. And if you're not seeing something here that you're experiencing, or if you have something that you have going on right now, let us know in the chat. We definitely want to know, you know, what some of the changes that you guys are experiencing right now as part of our new normal. So we also have, I think, a poll that started to know if you've had that 4 shots of espresso been part of a bad change. So we have, I'm not sure if, yeah.
We've been technologically tripped up here because...
those polls are not supposed to be started yet. I'm not sure who's doing that. So somebody needs to stop pressing the polls button.
And of course, co-hosts can't, I don't think co-hosts can vote.
Yes, they can. Somebody needs to quit hitting the polling button. The polls are not for anybody yet. Stop that.
You know what? It might have been when everyone was made a co-host, it might have been the reaction icon might have moved.
2 different things.
Oh, okay, just checking. So
I'm looking at it right now. 2 different things. Stop touching the poll buttons, folks, please. Remember, I said I was going to break people's fingers. Don't do that.
So, all right, or like I said, feel free to use the chat function. I think everybody's been working well with that to be able to tell us about some changes that you have going on. So again, to be clear, this is where some strong OCM or organizational change management practices, like Jen talked about, ready, willing, able. We want to make sure people can ease into the future so that, frankly, we want to realize those business goals and that ROI as fast as possible for whatever the change is. So I want to make sure you guys understand the future state is the goal, but we need the people to arrive at the goal ready, willing, able, and that comes with a lot of preparation behind it. So I'm going to preface this comment, when to incorporate change management, to say this is not at all about a dig to anybody in project management. So I'm going to start by saying that because I work with PMs every day, and we have such a great symbiotic relationship. But we've had to kind of go through this approach. So because we have a whole bunch of tools available, you know, adoption strategy and readiness and all these stakeholder things that we pay attention to, you know, these are things that need some runway, like Jen mentioned. You got to lay the runway out so you can launch the plane successfully. If the runway is not smooth, if the runway is not well prepared, if you haven't made sure that the runway is clear for that plane to take off, then things can go wrong. And that's what I'll say about that. So as I mentioned, my 4 shots of espresso example is when change management is brought very late into the process. We often get called into cases where we're brought in, sprinkle a little communication and training at the end of the process, and we'll be good to go. And the reality is that's not always very successful. You know, communication and training is absolutely needed, but it's definitely not the only piece of change management. So what we're recommending here is you take a parallel approach, so that while the project efforts are going on, there are also change management efforts that are taking place, particularly to understand your audience and who's being impacted and how it impacts the business and what does success look like for people. And so that really is at the foundation of what we're gonna go over here in just a second. The picture that I'm going to give you here is about a number of different activities that can take place as part of a change management effort. Typically, like I said, clients might ask for communication and training. They might say, hey, Jen, I got this massive implementation going on. I need someone to help me with communications and training. And again, absolutely critical, but it really should be driven by a holistic change strategy that's really rooted in understanding the complex and sometimes unknown impacts of the changes that you take place. So technology could be great. We could have all the bells and whistles. People are super excited. Procurement is excited about it. Our sponsors are excited. Everybody's good to go, but there are still changes to the skills, the roles and responsibilities, and the behaviors of folks. So we want to, again, make sure that we're impacting that ROI. So for today, we certainly don't have time to go over all of these things. So we're going to just focus on one very important section, and that is at the beginning with the strategy and the vision. So we've got 2 tools to go over with you, and Jen is going to explain our first one.
Thanks, Genevieve. So the first one we call an adoption canvas. And this is one of our tools that works really well in both an agile environment or in a waterfall delivery environment. The nice thing about the adoption canvas is it gives us a template that we can use to co-create with our key project sponsors and representative stakeholders that vision of what we're trying to achieve with the project. And we can also strategize with them. We can work with them to understand at a high level, who do we think this is impacting, and how do we think we need to, what are the levers we can push on to help get them engaged in this and understanding it, and that willing component bought in to going along the journey with us. And then ultimately, what are those activities that we need to do in what time frame, et cetera. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the template. Again, this is a template that I highly recommend be co-created. One of the benefits of that, for one, it's a time saver. For number 2 is by creating it together, you're getting instant buy-in. So you don't have to then go socialize it with everybody. You may have a few people who weren't involved who you're going to socialize it with, but you essentially have a lot of your key decision makers in the room contributing to this. So we start out, we want to understand who are the key stakeholders we're talking about. What is it that they need to, how are they going to be impacted by this change? Who are the people that need to change? And what are the key activities that they need to change? We also look at KPIs. How are we going to measure success? What does it look like when we measure success? What's going to improve? We also want to understand the value proposition and the problems that we're trying to solve from their perspective, because we're going to do a lot of communicating. We want to communicate through their lens. What is this going to mean to them? What's in it for them? Why should they get on board with this? And how are we going to best engage and connect with them? we have certain things we can do from a communication standpoint. We have certain points in time along the project where it makes sense to be engaging. And so let's figure out what we think those are and how we're going to go about it. And also we want to understand how we can segment that population. We often talk about creating personas or understanding for specific groups, what's their perspective, what's going to be their experience, and how do we create a great experience that's going to meet their needs. We also want to look ahead to what might get in our way. What do we need to overcome? How do we get there? And then we want to be sure we understand from various stakeholders' perspectives those features and benefits that are coming. What's coming with this that's going to be of value that we can really help use to sell it. So there are different aspects to this when you think about it. The value proposition is really underlying what's the why? Why are we doing this and why now? And that gets right at the heart of helping people to be willing to make this change and go on this journey with us. It's the place I usually like to start. I'll often take a stakeholder group through a 5 whys exercise to really drive down to a true why statement of why this is going to bring value to the organization and a why that people can buy into. The next block gets at this is the what. When we start talking about the relationships, the segments, the communication, the features and benefits, that's the what of the solution. And the other side of this diagram really gets at the how. So this is allowing us to drive to all of those components, the why, the what, and the how, in order to ultimately do all of the things we need to get done to pave that runway that Genevieve talked about. It's a very valuable tool. What you'll find is on one page, you've got it all. You've got the high points. And from this, it can be your launch pad to do a number of the different tactical things that we can do. So this is one of the tools we're going to give to you to work on in your special interest groups today. Genevieve, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And I will mention this. I don't know if anybody in the audience has really worked through an integration or mergers and acquisitions type of activities, but this can be a really helpful tool. I was actually just talking to a colleague about this yesterday, this tool, so that they can begin that planning process. What are the segments? How do we break out the work streams that need to happen? And it can take some very complex things and distill them into a single page. So I can't express enough the strength of such a simple tool and a good place to start a conversation. Okay, so the second tool we're going to give you, and to be clear, we had a lot of tools that we looked at as we were working with Patty and Tamara on preparing for this. There were a number of tools that we looked at, and we really narrowed it down to 2. And I'm going to say an empathy map. It sounds like a very touchy-feely tool, and I know sometimes that's tough to think about and to work through, but it is, again, a really powerful tool to understand who is impacted by the change. Because at the end of the day, whatever you're developing, whatever is being rolled out for implementation, it's going to have an impact on the people. And as Jen was mentioning earlier, it doesn't matter how great the technology, how crisp the process is, if you aren't giving the people something they value, it's gonna, it's not gonna be an if you build it, they will come. You need to be intentional with how you're working with the stakeholder groups. So what we want to do here is understand there's a number of different ways you can use this, but you want to do a current state, future state. If you remember me talking about that before, we got to get them from current to future. We understand it's painful, but this should be done from the perspective of the audience and how they're going to experience the change. It's about the people side of change, so you can document this. So if we look at this empathy map, we look through some of these different boxes. Again, this is an ambiguous person, if you will. Think of it as an audience, right? Think of it as a group of stakeholders. If something is impacting a particular group in IT, or from IT to a particular business group, you're developing a new piece of software or you're rolling out some kind of new tool, think about that stakeholder group that's impacted from the perspective of your change. And for your exercise, if you're documenting and you want to differentiate, use italics for current state and bold for future or something like that, just to kind of keep track of your conversation. But really to kind of go through these very quickly, if you look at what are people saying, you could think about what are people saying today about our current state. How do they describe what matters to them today? And that could very well have changed. So you may need to, given again a global pandemic, which throws a monkey wrench in a lot of things, but we still need to be very intentional about how things might change. So this is something you could revisit. You could look at things like, for what are people doing? What actions or behaviors are you noticing from people in their current state? And what do you want to see them doing in the future state? What are the norms that are happening? If you think about what are people thinking? What do your users think about the tool? What does this say about the values or the beliefs of that organization or that team? What matters to them? What motivates them? And then same thing for the future state. How do you think about what matters to them in the future state? And then feeling, I know feeling is tough, but perception is reality, right? So what emotions might your user groups be feeling about their experience? Is there any new belief or feeling they have about the tool, the team, the organization based on that future state? Because a lot of our initiatives are based on a survey. And so we change the way we're doing things, we implement something new, you incorporate something like Slack to improve your communication. So you can think through these things from the lens of your audience. What they're seeing, this could be in their environment, it could be what they're seeing on their screen, what are they seeing from their supervisors or their leadership, their executives? Are they seeing you be present and visible as part of the change? Are they seeing you stand up and say, this is going to be great for us, here's what's in it for you? Or are they hanging back and not being champions of the change, right? Definitely things to think about there. And from a hearing perspective, what are they hearing from each other? What are they hearing from their leaders? Who are the influencers on that organization that might be giving them messages that you may or may not have control over? So all of that to say, this is to think about your audience with intention and to focus some of your change efforts around the people that are impacted by it. So I will pause for a moment. We went through that very quickly. And the next thing we're going to do is put you into breakout groups. Before I do that, I'll invite anybody to put questions in the chat, or if you have something very quick that you have questions on before we break you out into your groups.
Well, I think it's just a reminder that you can self-select the group you want to be in. So there's going to be six.
So let me just kind of jump in here.
So
here's what's going to happen. When I click open all rooms, the facilitators are going to automatically get pushed into the 6 different rooms that we've created for each of the different SIGs. Everybody else is going to go into a room called Launchpad. Once you're in the Launchpad room, you can go to the very bottom of the Zoom window, and you should right now see where it says breakout rooms underneath 4 different squares. Does everybody see that?
Not yet, because you haven't launched the breakout rooms.
Well, no, you should still, if you look at your Zoom window and you hover down on the bottom where the menu bar is, because you're a co-host, you should see breakout rooms.
Don't see it yet.
Oh.
No, not seeing it.
Oh, it must be because I haven't opened them. Okay, so when I click on open rooms, you should see breakout rooms, the 4 little squares. You'll be able to click on that. It should pop up with a win. I can't show it to you because obviously I can't share my screen, but it's going to pop up. I know. When you see it, if I do it right now, you're all going to go away, so you won't be able to hear me, right? So I got to describe it to you. When I click create all rooms, you're all going to go away from this room. You're going to end up in Launchpad if you're not a facilitator. When you're in Launchpad, you're going to click, you should see then an option on the menu across the bottom called breakout rooms. Click on that, and a menu is going to pop up with the list of these 6 other SIGs. And if you hover over it, it should give you the option to join. Whichever one you want to join, that's what you want to go to. You click join, and it will move you to that room. I will probably, now that I think about it, come to Launchpad, just to make sure everybody kind of makes their way to the different rooms. And then I will come back out to the main room.
Okay.
So I'm going to hit open all rooms. Facilitators, you're going to go to your rooms.
Okay.
Everybody else will go to Launchpad. All right? Everybody ready?
Nope. Hang on one sec, Stephanie. Sorry, this is Genevieve.
Hi.
I want to explain what you guys need to do in your rooms.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We're all adjusting to our new normal, so it's going to take some deliberate communication to do that. So we're going to give you about 30 minutes. So we should be coming back about, I think we'll come back to the main room about 8:05. I'm maybe not timing that quite correctly.
So 30 minutes. Yeah. So whatever time we started.
Let's, yeah, we're running a bit behind, so maybe we need to say 20 minutes.
20?
Okay.
Okay.
And with that in mind, there was a link to the templates, which you guys have, you can use. Jen and my contact info is in there. But you can also have a conversation. First, I want you to get to know each other in each of your SIG rooms. Figure out together what's a common change that your role is facing in your special interest group. Is there a particular change that is top of mind for either all of you or one of you? If you're going to fill out the templates, pick someone who's going to do that, and then pick someone who's going to share out to the rest of the group at the end. Okay, so facilitators will be in each room. Jen and I will be bouncing around for questions. Stephanie, I think
Yes, that's my cue. All right, I'm going to click open all rooms. I will join everybody else in Launchpad. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay. So how we doing? Everybody coming in? Can everybody hear me? Probably coming in on mute. That's one thing to know.
We can hear you.
Yeah, when you come into a new room or you go
Yeah.
back to the main room, you're going to come in muted. So just know that. You'll probably want to unmute yourself when you join. Okay, so now when you hover in your Zoom, you should see the menu pop up at the bottom. Do you see breakout rooms now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Click on that, and you should be able to scroll down, and you see all the different rooms you can join.
And you can see the facilitators that are already there.
Yep, the facilitators are in those rooms, and you can now choose to join whichever room you prefer.
Stephanie, this is Dan, and I'm on an iPad, and I don't see this at all.
Oh, you're on a mobile device. Yeah, which room do you want to go to?
What are my options?
DevOps and Software Engineering, Programs and Program Management, Business Apps, Infrastructure, Data Analytics, Digital Security and Risk.
Can I have the options again?
Digital Security and Risk, Data Analytics.
Apps is fine.
Apps, sorry, Biz Apps?
There's apps? Yeah.
Okay. Off you go.
This is Steve Mycroft. I have the same problem. You can drop me anywhere.
Don't make me choose for you. Which one you want?
You're going to have to repeat them again.
All right. Digital Risk,
Yeah.
Security, Data Analytics, Infrastructure, Biz Apps, Programs and Program Management, DevOps and Software Engineering.
Infrastructure.
Off you go. Okay. Bob, where you want to go?
Oh, I'm watching the rooms populate, so I don't want to go to the one that's too full. I'm just going to jump in.
All right. And
DevOps,
Laura?
Data Analytics.
Okay, perfect. Laura, you feel good about where you want to go? You're on mute if you're talking to me. Laura?
So Jen, since they're not numbered, do you want to split them up by, you can grab the top 3 and I'll take the bottom 3? Or do you have
Yeah, the other thing I'm wondering is we actually have like the data analytics, we only have our board member in there.
Yeah.
So we may want to pop in there and have her move to another room.
Possible.
Or do we want to just keep it? I mean, she's going to be talking to herself.
There's that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm going to go back. I'm going to leave this and go back out to the main room. I think Laura is either not paying attention. You know what? Laura is more program and program management, so I'm just going to move her there.
Okay.
Hopefully she doesn't.
We'll do that.
doesn't
Yes.
lose it. And Alan says not joined, so I'm not sure what's going on with him. So anyway, I'm going to go back to the main room. You ladies figure out what you need to do. You should be able to do what you
We'll
need
do
to
that.
from here. All right.
Great.
Okay, perfect.
I'll go.
To get something like DevOps implemented. So, I mean, that's some of the relationship, you know, the communications, and you know, some of the key activities that we discussed.
I'm going to tag on to that. I, as a person who's been around forever, has had real issues with DevOps. But after this conversation, I am enticed to learn more around DevSecOps, because that answers the challenge that I've had around introducing security into the overall process flow, because without addressing the security issues from the beginning, you just end up having crap at the end. And so this was a very valuable conversation for me, and I appreciate Bob's tolerance and Anui's tolerance with me.
Hallelujah, sister.
I love it. I love it.
Make our life a lot simpler. Right, go on, Genevieve.
Yeah, no worries. Just moving along. I want to get you guys out of here. Let's talk to our programs and program management folks. What did you guys talk about?
All right, I should be able to explain this in about 20, 30 minutes. We'll be good. Just kidding. Just kidding. So, you know, we're program managers, so everybody here deals with change day in, day out. I'm going to just give you some of the headlines. I'm not going to go through the whole conversation. So most people acknowledge that it's difficult to manage, particularly with companies that have been very close. You know, I'm with Blue Cross. Those people used to always be in really just a few buildings very close to one another. We had Discount Tire. I talked to a colleague at USAA, also companies that have been around for a long time. We refer to the people that have been born in the building, and they've never seen an environment like this. Some of us have worked a lot remote. There are people who have never worked remote, so it's very tricky. Remote work requires a lot more person-to-person contact. I do see people, and we all saw people that kind of revert to email or IM, where really it's even more important to pick up the phone, you know, however you do that these days, and call the person and speak to them. It's important to have leadership support. I mean, if you've ever done any type of change management, the leader sponsor is key, whether you do the methodology we saw today or ADCAR or any other one. You know, it's super important to have that. A lot of companies don't understand that. They think I just say, you guys go do that changey thing and let me know how it goes. And then we talked a lot about, you know, the people that are down in the change area, and that they have the technical skills, but often do not have the soft skills, leadership. So when you think about training, think about it in a strategic way, not just get another, this was my term, get another merit badge, I've got this certification, that certification, and really think, how do you develop those leaders to help drive change in the organization? And that is not a Microsoft certification, it's something else. And sometimes that's done with a mentor. I mean, the mentor program that we offer is fantastic. I highly recommend it. But it's also something that can be done within a company. It doesn't have to be a external thing. And so you help to develop their leadership skills. That's our summary. Thank you.
Only 7 seconds over. Very good. Thank you so much.
Timing is everything.
Let's move on to business applications.
Yeah, so am I on here?
You're on.
Okay, so basically it was interesting. We had a couple people that in the group that are living through huge transformations at the moment, and hearing their stories about how they've incorporated organizational change as a group to manage, and there was a lot of us in the group that have lived change management either in a previous life or we're doing it currently trying to help clients, because a lot of us are actually consultants helping companies adopt, whether it be transformation, robotic process automation, things of that nature. And we all agree that regardless of how good we are technically, we always have to take into consideration the impact of what that technical change is going to have on the people that utilize those systems, that technology. And we got into a side discussion about how many times do we leave work on Friday and we come in on Monday and nothing works, but no, nothing changed, or the technologist, there's no way my change caused that, because it doesn't work that way, and you back it out and sure enough it restores service. So we all understand the impact of organizational change and what that means from technology, and you just really have to define what your impact is for your change and make sure you're communicating. And I like that the diagram that Genevieve had with when you get change management involved. Certainly it can depend on the type of change being implemented, but the more impactful the change, the sooner in the project change management should be a part of that, and starting the communication and getting people to understand. My personal experience is you can send emails day after day after day, and no one's, there's only so many people that are going to read them, because I don't know how many people have been surprised by a change that you've communicated and they still have no idea. You will always have that human factor that you will have to deal with, regardless of what methods, whether it be brown bags, in-person meetings, stop-bys, whatever you want to call them. There's always going to be some level of organization that doesn't get the message, but everything you can do to prevent that from happening obviously depends on the project that you're implementing.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate it. Yes, definitely. I said Jim's going to train the next session on change management, because he got it in the conversation we had. How about the infrastructure group?
Okay, I have my timer on for 2 minutes. It was pretty good. I thought that Kathy and Steve and I should go into business together, because Steve is involved with helping companies outsource networking, and Kathy is on the security side, and I'm on storage and compute. And so the two things, obviously, in the infrastructure side that are top of mind are what's going on now with supporting so many remote people. But, we talked about the fact that so much of that is, we've even beaten it to death, I think, in SIM meetings, right? So the other one, obviously, is, moving to the cloud, especially for infrastructure folks. Concerns, worries, business perspective. How do you do it from a, getting your team up and being ready to go, especially, where we are, we have, at Avnet, we have people have been there 20, 30 years in some cases, and now putting them into a cloud-based mindset. And so I think this will be something that will drive people to this SIG potentially. But we talked about how do you deal with your team in the changes? How do you deal with leadership? How do you work through the business and finance teams? And how do you convince the line of business managers that this is all going to work? And it's all turned around with, how do you make sure it's secure when it goes up? So there's a lot of moving pieces at this point. So, and a lot of things to fill out on this map. So, and I did that with 2 seconds to go.
Very good. Yes, you mentioned cloud transformations. So hot right now, right? We're seeing a ton of that in all the different verticals. And quick side note, I'm actually a 9-year AVNet veteran myself, but on the old TS side of the business.
We're sorry to see you go.
I know, it's all good. All right, so we are going to skip data analytics because we had a small group there. But how about the digital risk and security group?
Small group? You don't know what a small group is? Paul, there's just me and Ron. The old
powerful small group.
Yeah, small but beautifully formed is what I would say. Right, so Ron and I had a good conversation about what is the biggest topic to me right now, which is in the digital risk and security space, which is providing remote access to people, right? So COVID accelerated people's remote access capabilities from years to days. And a lot of companies scrambled to try to provide remote access to their staff. Some companies had something in place, but it wasn't scaled. Other companies had nothing, very little beyond perhaps just kind of help desk type people internal to IT that were able to provide remote access. Unfortunately, as a consequence of that, there's a lot of pretty bad solutions thrown out there, like opening up RDP to the world, right? Remote desktop protocol from Windows. And you know, I work for a cybersecurity company that does a lot of incident response. So we're the ones you call when you've got ransomware or you've got malware or whatever. And we're getting a lot of calls. And a lot of those calls are because they've opened up remote access technologies to the world, like RDP, which we've now renamed the Ransomware Deployment Protocol, because that's basically what it is. And you know, so the challenge really is, you've got to roll these things out quickly, but you've got to make them as secure as possible. So how do you do that? Well, you know, take advantage of multi-factor authentication. Yeah, it's a bit of a pain, but it's going to save your company's hide, I can tell you. If you've got VPN capabilities, use them. A lot of firewalls in companies already support VPN, people just haven't used them. The other thing is people are going to use their own technology. How are you going to protect them? You know, little Johnny's just played World of Warcraft. How are you going to make sure you're not infecting the company? Are they going to allow you to run company software on those devices? So these kind of issues. Anyways, a lot to talk about, run out of time, so we can't do it.
Look at that, right on time. Thank you so much. I don't think I skipped anyone. Speak now or forever hold your peace, as they say. Okay, I want to do a quick wrap up again. We're over time, but gosh, I hate cutting off those conversations because it sounds like you guys had a very robust conversation. So I will skip the Zoom chat and polling and things like that because we're out of time. But it sounds like you had some really good conversations. I'm going to encourage you, and I think Simon and the rest of the board will certainly echo this. SIG channels now available on Slack. So using
they're all out there. They're all created.
Use these SIG groups, continue this conversation and collaborate on things. You've got so much expertise just on this call alone. Think about the rest of your membership and how you can collaborate and reach out to people that have maybe done the change already that you're encountering, or you can ask questions and leverage each other's expertise. And maybe if you don't know the answer, you know, and you're trying to figure out how to design with your end users in mind, please reach out to Jen or I. We're here for you. We don't want to necessarily leave you out in the wind to go on your own. But if you have questions, connect with us on LinkedIn. In the templates that were sent out, I've got our email addresses in there so that you have that if you'd like to reach out to us that way. Are there any other messages from our sponsors? Or Stephanie, any tasks, Simon?
Yep, I'm going to have a few closing statements. Any other questions for the good ladies here? Okay.
Can I just have Jen do a quick? I forgot this slide. Can I have Jen do a quick close for us, and then we'll pass it over?
Yep. Okay, do that.
Thank you.
I will make it fast. We opened up with Genevieve's nightmare story of her 4 cups of coffee, and I thought I'd close out with a positive story, a happy ending. It was a client I worked with mid-January, a cold morning. I'd come out from the business support war room to get some coffee. The system had been live for several hours. We'd been on site and ready to support the business since long before Starbucks had opened. So I was eagerly looking for my coffee. And as I rounded the corner, I walked into a pretty bright hallway and bumped into one of our project sponsors. And I heard a lot of comments in your debriefs about the importance of leaders and leading these changes. And absolutely, exclamation point, exclamation point. It's a huge thing. And it's a lot of what we spend time doing is making it easy because we know they've got busy day jobs. And so our goal is to make it easy for them to lead the change for their team. And we had done a good job of that with this group. We had also found ways to connect with a very distributed and blue-collar field crew in a way that made sense to them. Again, working through leaders, building the right connections. As I bumped into that sponsor, we just exchanged some morning pleasantries, and then I asked him how he was doing, and he waved his cell phone at me. And he said, "It's eerily quiet." And my response was, well, that's what good change management feels like. When you've done it the right way and you've laid that foundation and you've created the runway and you've taken the plane off, but you didn't have the barriers in the way because you've worked with the leaders, you've cleared the hurdles, you helped people be ready and be willing and be able. Or I heard reference to ADKAR using he created the awareness and the desire and the knowledge and the ability. That's what it feels like. It shouldn't be a lot of complaining calls. And it doesn't mean change isn't hard. Change is still hard because we're having to learn new ways of working. But there are ways to make that a more positive experience. So he then shared with me that the few calls he was getting, he was absolutely astounded because they were from some of these blue-collar workers in the field calling him to tell him how much they appreciated the solution and that they thought it was actually going to be a positive change for him. And his comment was, that never happens. Now, of course, you need good working software as the beginning, but you also need to have prepared the ground and helped people to get ready for the change and feel like they could be successful in it. And I felt like we had done a good job of that. He explained that this was something that usually didn't happen, and typically his phone would be blowing up with complaints, especially from these blue-collar workers in the field following a system change. So he's been a very public advocate for us and believes that a significant contributor to this success was the organizational change management plan. I'll add to it that good working software was a component of it, and then doing the at-the-elbow support that we were able to provide to the teams, a very distributed group of users and a lot of different personas or role groups. So it can turn out very well. And we wanted to close with a cup of coffee and a quiet phone. So I'll end it with that.
Thank you.
All right, Simon.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Genevieve. Jen, really, really appreciate it. Some great toolkits there, actually, and very good way of organizing those. Thanks for the toolkits, but also thanks for facilitating our first foray into special interest groups. All right. I did see a couple of notes that people said, "Oh, you cut us off, Steph. We were right in the conversation." The conversation going. That's the whole purpose, right? These SIGs are now.
I'm the moderator. I get to be the mean one.
Exactly. These SIGs are now.
I'm good at it.
Slack. Join the channels. Continue the conversation. Okay, that's the whole point of getting these SIGs fired off. Okay, particularly in these times where we can't meet as often as we used to. Take advantage of birds of a feather, right? The people who have the same interests as you and you want to collaborate with. That's really what one of the core missions of SIM. But don't be restricted to those, right? This is an open forum. If you want to fire up a new SIG, do it, no problem, okay? You're encouraged to create your own SIG, bring people together. You're not restricted to those 6, okay? And use Slack to facilitate that. Once we can get together, get yourselves together, right? Meet for breakfast or lunch or whatever we can do in that time. But create these vibrant subgroups within SIM. That's what we really want to create here. So thanks everyone, really, really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around. I know we're bit later than we normally are, but I think it was really